We're now joined by Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com, here on 365 Sports. Zach, thank you very much for your time. So what are your thoughts on Jim Nagy headed to Oklahoma and what Brent Venables and the Sooners are trying to do?
A lot of thoughts. First of all, I can't imagine Oklahoma making a better hire for this role than Jim Nagy. I mean, he's been an NFL scouting college players for 25 years now. He was a scout for 5 different teams until he took over the Senior Bowl in 2018. And then now he's made a living evaluating college football players, looking at your LSUs, your Georgias, your Ohio State, and then also looking at your Tarletons and Eastern Washington and finding players that could play on the same field. So this is a guy who has a very trained eye when it comes to this sort of thing, knows probably everyone when it comes to talent procurement and evaluation in the NFL level, at the college level. I really think this was a hire that if you told me they could get this guy, I would have said that's off the board. So it's more than a home run hire from that respect.
Zach, portal-wise, I think this is like even so much more than high school recruiting, because by the time most of these guys are in the portal, Jim Nagy's already done all his work on them, right?
Yeah, and I think certainly he keeps an eye on draft eligible players. I think the recruiting aspect of it will be new to him, but from what I understand, he'll hire some people under him that will he'll have an assistant GM. He'll have a director of high school recruiting. He'll have a director of, college personnel. So this is more than just getting Jim Nagy. It's getting his contacts that you can go up and fill out your staff. He's going to be a recruiting asset when Oklahoma goes after portal players and after high school players. There's a lot of facets to this hire for these guys.
Part of that is taking a little bit off of Brent Venables' plate, a little bit more, right? I mean, you noted you had a piece from a few hours ago on kind of how Oklahoma's lining itself up, whether it's Venables in this present and hopefully the long term, but whether it's him or not, they're getting their ducks in a row to be successful, Zach.
Yeah, I think if you take a close read of that press release, and as you guys know, nothing ends up in a press release like this by accident. So they close of the opening paragraph. It says Jim Nagy will report to the Oklahoma head coach. Did not specifically say will report to Brent Venables. Brent Venables was the 4th person quoted in this after Nagy himself, after Joe Castiglione, and after Randall Stevenson, the former AT&T CEO, who is now taking an executive role with Oklahoma football and Oklahoma athletics. And until now, his role had been kind of nebulous, but this defined what his title is going to be and what he's going to oversee. He'll help oversee budget, but he's going to be the chairman of Oklahoma football, and the Jim Nagy will report to him, as will Brent Venables. So this isn't a situation to where I don't think where Brent Venables is going to walk into his GM's office and say, I want to recruit this kid, you go make it happen, or we need 2 cornerbacks for next year's team, go identify them. He's going to be equal to Brent Venables in a way. It makes it clear he's not working for Brent Venables. He's working for Oklahoma football. And my read on it is if Brent Venables doesn't get it done next year, well, Randall Stevenson's still going to be at Oklahoma, and so is Jim Nagy. And Jim Nagy's probably going to have a heavy hand in picking Brent Venables' replacement.
Zach, one of the things we've gotten used to, of course, in college athletics from what then became NIL, then the transfer portal and all the things that are happening in college football, playoff expansion, the House settlement, whenever that is official, is having the names like Jim Nagy, that title, general manager in college football. That is the dude in the pro football. Now, head coach, depending on who it is, has a lot of power. But how interesting is it how we've flipped the switch so quickly that a GM now is someone that we're covering in college football?
Yeah, and Stanford hired Andrew Luck.
Yep.
And they stated specifically when they hired him that the head coach, Troy Taylor, in this instance, reports to Andrew Luck. Some other schools have made some big-time hires at the GM position, and maybe they didn't state it as clearly that the head coach is subordinate to him, but they did state clearly upon reading their contract and hiring him that the head coach is they're not tied to their head coach. If the school can change head coach and the GM is going to stay there, and one presumes have a heavy hand in picking his replacement as well.
You guys are also reporting that Seth Luttrell on his way to join his buddy Josh Heupel's staff, and pretty nice hire there by Tennessee to add into the offensive room.
If you're looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for both sides, and really spelling it out. It obviously these guys were teammates, but the manner in which they were replaced and who they were replaced by is kind of freaky. They were both obviously fired from their alma maters, and they were replaced by two Texans from the Panhandle that were both right around 30 years old, Josh Heupel and Lincoln Riley, obviously, and then Seth Luttrell and Ben Arbuckle. Tennessee, they lost Mackenzie Milton. He was kind of their quarterbacks analyst, which would be the quarterbacks coach at UCF. So I presume that will be the role that Seth Luttrell takes for Tennessee. He'll be helping another former Oklahoma quarterback in Joey Halsley, who's Tennessee's offensive coordinator and QB's coach.
Zach, you got it?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, the timing of it. Obviously, Zach, we talk cover a lot of the Big 12, and couldn't help but see your reaction to the Texas Tech facilities video you put out there. You kind of wrote a little bit over on footballscoop.com about your thoughts, and for those that haven't seen it, definitely need to go check it out. But safe to say that they blew you away and are going to blow everybody else away with what they've done. How impressed are you with what they've lined up in terms of facilities, and how much do you think stuff like this matters and helps them moving forward?
Yeah, for those that aren't as familiar, most of these facilities tours, the videos, they make them look snazzy. They last 3 or 4 minutes. This one's nearly 10, and there's not a whole lot of fluff in there just because there's so much to show. I happened to be there a couple summers ago when they were in the process of building all this stuff. They just started, and their players' lounge was really just a ping pong table in the main lobby of the facility. So they'd really outgrown that place, and it's safe to say they haven't outgrown their new place. It was really well done in terms of stuff that doesn't really help you win, but it's just nice to have. They have a podcast studio, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I think will really help them win. Some sleep pods and things of that nature that'll help with recovery. They have a full-on walkthrough room that I imagine specifically their defensive staff will get a whole lot of use out of, and quarterbacks will get a whole lot of use out of. That they can have the full-on video screen, have their entire defense out there showing how we line up to this formation. How do we line up to, if they motion, who has this guy? That I imagine is going to be really useful for them. And then you can go through an entire week of Texas Tech football and not step outside until you go and play in the game, because everything you need to do kind of rolls into one another, straight into, from the locker room to the weight room to the indoor facility. You don't have to step outside at any point. So I think it's going to really help them in two ways. One, just have more efficient training of players, and two, it'll send a message that when you come out to Texas Tech, they're taking winning seriously.
Zach, there's 130-plus teams in FBS, so I'm not asking you to be able to just, recite them off the top of your head. But, in fact, Texas Tech, they had coaching changes. Dave Aranda with a couple more defensive staff changes, including Paul Gonzalez. We've seen and discussed what's going on with Oklahoma, maybe at the higher level. Is there Texas got Dwayne Aquina immediately to replace Terry Joseph. They lose to Shard Choice, but they end up with the running backs coach out of West Virginia. Is there anything on your radar about what teams or what programs may have had the best offseason when it comes to coaching staff changes, anything like that?
I think we're close to 50 changes, offensive and defensive coordinator. And at some point, probably in the summer, once everything is really settled down, I'll write an article just kind of detailing, hey, by the way, here's the programs that did not make a head coaching and or a coordinator change. But the program that I think has done the best job of leveling up, setting aside the head coaching changes, among the programs that brought back their head coach that I think have made the best chance at leveling up, I think one, you have to put Oklahoma on the list. A lot of it depends on how much faith you have in Ben Arbuckle. But the other program I think that's done a really good job is USC. It seems like they've hired half the Big Ten player personnel directors. They hired Notre Dame's general manager, Chad Bowden. One of his lieutenants went on to run recruiting at Illinois, and they've obviously done a really good job. He's now with them at USC. They've hired a couple other people. So I think that it's probably not going to make a difference for what USC is in 2025. But if we look back to 2027, what program has leveled up considerably from where they are? That's probably my first choice.
Isn't that interesting? Both of them are attached in some way, Paul and Craig, because of Lincoln Riley going from Oklahoma to USC.
Yeah. Okay, Zach, you broke down the numbers. Smokey, you were confused about this, about Georgia, about
I still am,
adding scholarships. Okay, so Zach was kind enough to do this on footballscoop.com.
Thank you.
So Georgia is going to be able to play at 105 players, about $129,000 before NIL steps in per player on that roster. And overall, they're reducing the number of athletes, but raising the number of scholarships from 550 to 475 and 270 to 370 on scholarships. So that means there'll be less athletes, but more of the athletes that are there will have scholarships, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And obviously the big one you mentioned, going from 130-odd football players, only 85 on scholarship, to 105, and all 105 could potentially be on scholarship.
Okay, that math to me was like they're going to add 100 scholarships but cut 75. 75. I was trying to figure out how that, but yeah, football from 85 to 105 or 80 to 105. It's a lot of moving parts. Is there anybody that you know that's like what you would consider an FBS program, or one that is constantly in the mix to win, that is not going to do the full $20 million it is?
I haven't heard of any. That not to say that that's not going to happen. I'm certain that it is. I saw a note this morning that I want to say it was the program like Morgan State. It might not have been them specifically, but it was one of those that was at the very bottom edge of Division I, and they announced that they're going to distribute to their athletes something like $293,277, and how they arrived at that dollar figure was really funny to me. So I think everyone that is going to try to opt, because if you come out and say, hey guys, everyone else is paying 20.5, but we're only going to pay 15, you're announcing to the world that you're not serious about winning, and no one wants to come out and say that. No one wants to be the AD that comes out and say that, or the head football coach, because you're trying to do the best job you can for 2 to 3 years and then move on to another place. And how you pay for it then becomes someone else's problem. So I think long story longer, I think I think a lot of people are going to try to opt into this, but not everyone will. Like, I talked to a coaching agent at a MAC school. He represents a MAC assistant, and he said that they've had trouble making payroll in the last couple of years. So to think that they're going to find $20.5 million under the couch cushions is hard to fathom.
Last question for you. We appreciate your time. Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. So Ohio State loses their coordinators. That's a positive thing because of what they did. They won a national title. Saban used to have this happen all the time. So they get Brian Hartline. They promote him. But Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator, was that a little bit odd to you? And did they, I don't know if they improved, but did they do well enough to move forward?
Yeah, I'm a little bit puzzled by the Matt Patricia hire as well. The hiring a quote-unquote NFL hired gun obviously worked out for them on the offensive side of the ball with Chip Kelly. But Matt Patricia, not to say the guy doesn't know football, he's forgotten more than all of us know combined. But it feels like it's been about 10 years since he's really been a hot name. So I would have loved to see the list of guys that Ryan Day considered but did not hire for whatever reason. The interesting one to me is Brian Hartline, because Ryan Day talked in January about how much it's freed him up not having to call plays, be the offensive coordinator, and just be the CEO head coach. That really helped him go on and win the national championship. Well, it's a lot easier to do that when you have Chip Kelly calling your plays than when you have Brian Hartline. So how much oversight is Brian Hartline going to have on the offense? That's a question for me to follow going into 2025.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you jumping on. Zach Barnett, his thoughts about Oklahoma beefing up the top level of their football program with Jim Nagy, who ran the Senior Bowl for quite some time with NFL experience also within franchises, and also the other coaching changes and other changes going on in college football.